Hey welders, ready to upgrade your gear and save some serious dough in the process? The Miller Build with Blue Savings and Rebate Program has you covered. Find amazing deals and cashback rebates on a wide range of Miller products, from welders to plasma cutters and everything in between, all backed by our 3-year warranty. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Take advantage of the Miller Build with Blue program now. Visit us online or stop by your nearest Miller distributor today to start saving.
Welcome back for another episode of the Strange Motion Way podcast. I'm your host, Tim Strange, along with
Carrie Strange.
This week we got, I'm just going to call him an industry badass. He's worked from people from B&M to Zoom clutches, to Hearst, to being the SEMA chairman. So we got our good friend, Jim Cozzie. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Strange Motion Way podcast. I am Tim Strange with
Carrie Strange.
This week we got, I'm just going to say, a hot rod aftermarket industry badass. Can we say that? Can we say badass?
I was going to say, is it okay to say badass? Is that all right?
Yeah, well, we try to keep this PG-13, and still the hardest one was my dad, to try to keep him PG-13. So,
every third word.
Yeah. Dave Shutton was a little bit worse. He kind of went off the rails and then never came back on.
He did really good till the end. So
Yeah.
He is currently the Director of Business Development at RideTech.
Yes.
He's been in the industry for over 30 years. He's worked in the aftermarket automotive specialty area and even TV production.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for just a few of these: B&M, Superpress, Zoom Performance Products, Hearst, RTM, Power Block. That's where we worked there together for a couple years at the TV studio. And also SEMA Board of Directors in the past, and much, much more. And I believe you're also in the SEMA Hall of Fame, correct?
Yes, and I was SEMA chairman 2008, 2009.
Okay. So welcome, Jim Cozzie. How you doing tonight?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Good.
I mean, I'm glad to see one of you. You know, you not so much. Carrie, I'm always glad to see Carrie.
Yeah, you're not the first one.
You're used to this abuse. I mean, come on, man. This is nothing new. Would you expect any less?
Well, none of this did I say that you were ever a male model.
No. Negative.
No.
And if you found that on the internet, it's erroneous.
Yeah. You did not be a body double for Zoolander. I did not find that.
Negative. No polls in my past. So
No. Okay, so let's get started back. You keep kicking me for it.
You're talking really loud.
I do talk loud.
He likes to yell really loud sometimes.
So okay, I'll try to talk quieter, but then it doesn't sound like
that's about a good level right there. Yeah.
See?
So let's get started back where you started as a young little grommet.
A young lad.
Was your family into cars, or did you just gravitate towards them?
They really weren't. I had an uncle that lived right next door to me where I grew up in Pennsylvania, and he was an engineer. He was a engineer for a company called Narco that made instruments for airplanes. So they were a big Cessna supplier, and he was a bit of a car guy. It's probably his fault more than anybody else's. And so one day I'm over there in his garage next door working on a 50 DeSoto, I think it was. I was always under the hood of that thing when it was the weekend. And one of his fellow engineers shows up with a 27 Ford Roadster with a Cadillac in it. It had a 3-speed LaSalle, had trips, it had see-through red wires and white walls, and I was done. I mean, at that point, the hook was in, and I've always gravitated towards cars until when I started getting my hands on them. I know my dad one time came home and I had a pedal car that was in the basement, and I actually took the engine off his lawnmower and unsuccessfully tried to figure out how to mount it to this pedal car. And so he pretty much knew at that time that he was in trouble too. So that's how that one went.
Was that the first time you got grounded?
No. No.
But it was
No.
the last.
No, I had plenty of practice at that point. But I knew very early on that I wanted to work in that arena. I didn't know what, but I knew it had to do with hot rods or cars of some nature. You know, it was.
And what time year was about this around?
So this would have been, let's see, the pedal car debacle would have been about 1965. Mm-hmm. And then by time I got to junior high school, well, I'll back up for a second. Same uncle I was talking about in second grade. You guys remember show and tell, right? Mm-hmm. So you know me, I bring in a 1-barrel carburetor. I don't even remember what it was off of, and stood there in front of a second grade class and explained how it worked. And I think it did a pretty good job, right? A lot of things carry on, right? You fake it till you make it. And so I'm looking, and those guys are all looking at me going like, I know what I'm talking about. So it worked out okay at that particular point.
Yeah, because most of the kids in your class, if you would have said, this is a flux capacitor, they wouldn't have known the difference.
No, yeah. Exactly. So I tell that story to kind of set the tone of where my head was growing up. And, and I was going through junior high school and that sort of thing. And when I was 15, I lost my dad unexpectedly. And so a couple things happened. I had a single mom. Now she was a single mom now. Didn't have a driver's license. Didn't work, which was typical back in those days. And myself and my brother, and she had a mortgage and she had all that good stuff. So, I mean, I had to grow up pretty quick and help take care of her and take care of the house and that sort of thing. So, and I look back on that, and there's a lot of things that I still do today that I look back on that fostered that sort of I don't even know what you would call it, behavior or leadership or, getting things done. So when I lost my dad, I was still in high school. I was 15. And after all that smoke cleared, it was time to go get a car. And so my very first car was a 60 Plymouth 2-door hardtop 318 3-speed. Christine, pretty rare piece. Mm-hmm. I didn't know any better at the time. And so I played with that. I didn't have a driver's license. And truth be known, even when my parents were alive, I was clipping their car since I've been about 14 years old, just out joyriding. We were in the country and it was a different time. Can we take 1 second? Is that all right? Mm-hmm. You take a second? I see this. Sorry, not to be gross. So I wound up buying a 67 Camaro, dark blue, light blue interior, white vinyl top, 327, 4-speed, just everything I ever wanted. And I was going to vocational school at the time, so I managed to be able to. Here's something you don't know about me. I was a body guy too.
Yeah.
I was spraying cars till I was about 20 years old. So I asked my wife.
You could use him as a volunteer if you.
I know that. We could have got him out of the office at the TV studio and put his to work.
And I said the other day, I wonder if I could still spray a car. I haven't done it in years. But anyway, long story short, so we get this Camaro, pretty nice shape. Stripped it all down, redid the body, repainted it, all lacquer, rubbed it, did it all myself, and that was my first real car. And that lasted about 8 months. And then I found a 69 Roadrunner in 1970. I mean, okay, you're sitting down, I paid $3,100 for that thing when I bought it. I have no idea what it's worth today, but probably a little bit more than that.
Yeah, that's a retirement plan now.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a few of those I can talk about in here, but I don't because it depresses me. So had the Roadrunner, went to school. I mean, went to finished up high school, started working at a Chevrolet dealership out of high school in the body shop, and then as a line mechanic after that.
And where were you living at this time?
Lansdale, Pennsylvania, which was about 40 minutes northeast of Philadelphia. So basically a Philadelphia suburb. And in those days, it really wasn't even a suburb. It was just out in the sticks. So working in a Chevrolet dealership, and then had decided I was going to college at night. I was working during the day. The whole school thing just really wasn't for me.
You see, we have a cat that shows up every once in a
problem.
while.
Hey, kitty.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for me, and I kept doing night classes and that sort of thing, and then the race car bug bit, and I had been going to drag races since I was 13, 14 years old. At the time, I really had a thing for super stock cars, and so I purchased.
How close was your local drag strip at that time?
So I could be racing in 2 hours in 4 different directions. So Cecil County was about 2 hours. Maple Grove was hour and a little bit of change. Englishtown was 2 hours. I'm trying to think where else. Delmar in Delaware, a couple hours. So
probably the only one of them still running is Maple Grove.
We could race 3-4 nights a week.
Is the only one of them still running Maple Grove? Because Englishtown is still there, but it's a junkyard.
There. Delmar, I think, is closed. Englishtown, as you mentioned, is closed. Maple Grove is running. I think that I think that's it. I think the rest of them have closed down. But we could, like I said, we could race Wednesday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights. And if you wanted to go Sunday, you could go Sunday. So we could race 4 times a week if we wanted to. And
what car were you drag racing then?
So it was a '69 Chevy 2. It ran super stock L automatic. I bought the car out of Georgia. I remember I'm 19, working in a Chevrolet dealership, making a ton of dough. I think it was $4, maybe $5 an hour.
Was it just a normal dealership, or was it like a performance dealership? They have any performance stuff going on?
It was a normal dealership. So, stories about the dealership were the one thing that I remember, and that we got a load of. We got 2. Cosworth Vegas in. And I'm probably the only one that really knew what that was. And I said, well, let me take this thing out and drive it. And they did go right to 7,000, I can tell you, without a problem. Right until they overheated and warped the head, and that's a whole other story. So no.
See, when I did Carrie's car and put the motor in the front, her Corvair, I wanted to put a Cosworth motor in it for about 2 weeks until I did some research and found all the bad problems. I was like, yeah, they look cool.
They were really good right up until the point where they started not being really good. And they had overheating problems. They had a lot of different problems. So I'm racing this Chevy 2. This was an original. If you know anything about super stock racing, it was originally Bobby Warren's car out of North Carolina. I bought it out of Georgia. And when you could buy a competitive running super stock car for, I don't know, $4,500, I think is what we paid for that. I mean, but at the time, man, that was all the money in the world. So I ran this thing. For about 4 months, and we were just racing the hell out of it and having a ball. And it was getting time. It was about mid-August. I was getting ready to go to U.S. Nationals in Indy, and we made some changes on the car, and I took it to Cecil County on a Sunday night, and Bobby Warren had 2 of those cars. He had a red car and a black car. I bought the red car. Black car belonged to a guy by the name of George Curitin in outside in Delaware. So I'm racing its sister's car, right? They were sisters. They were built by the same guy. I think he ran 1 class up from me. And first pass of the afternoon, the rear end locked up in the thing, and I was about 1,000 feet. And at the time, they had their guardrail was railroad ties. So you had a railroad tie going down and then cross, right? And then you had about a 3-foot strip of grass between the asphalt. Get rid of the cat. Between the asphalt and when you got to the railroad ties. And I remember, I mean, seriously, to this day, I remember feeling it jerk. I remember looking out the right side, watching all its tire smoke blowing off the right tire. I remember telling myself, stay off the grass, right? And so I tried to spin the car. All right, I'm out in the middle. George is in front of me. I'm not going to hit him. So I'm trying to get it to do one of these and stay off. Well, it just did a slow, lazy 180-degree turn. I'm staring at the starting line. I watched the generator light come on. I heard the noise. I watched the windshield crack, like just. This was 50-some years ago. I can't remember when I had for dinner, right? But this sticks in my head. And this is the next. So I'm had no bar in it and lap belt, right, and a $5 helmet. And
was this a quarter-mile track?
Quarter-mile.
Because you said 1,000 feet.
It's quarter-mile track.
And how fast of a car was this?
That thing would trap speed between 117 and 118 miles an hour. I mean, it's not top fuel, but let me tell you, you get hurt doing that. So thing rolled over 3 times, came up on its wheels. The passenger side roof was below my ear.
Oh, wow.
Because when it came down on that side, and the car just came straight down on that guardrail. That car was so twisted when I brought it back to the shop that night. I didn't bring it home. I didn't want my mother to see it. I took it to the shop and I jacked it up, and it would sit on 3 jack stands, 2 in the front, 1 in the back. I mean, it was just that twisted. So pulled the motor, pulled transmission, pulled the rear end, pulled everything that we could get out of it. Took the rest to the junkyard.
And how old were you then?
19.
And you were still living at home?
Still living at home.
So did your mom find out and then say you can't drive anymore? That's a Roland Leong story that his mom told him he couldn't drive anymore because he wasn't a good driver.
She found out. I mean, I told her the next morning. I can tell you the other thing I remember vividly is the next morning I couldn't move. I mean, literally could not move.
Yeah.
And so I told her what happened, and my mom was always kind of calm. You know, you sure you know what you're doing? Yes, ma'am. I'm good. Right. So I had some at the time we had some really good friends up in Newark, New Jersey that were, I don't know if you ever followed that scene, but there was a huge street racing scene that went on up there. And so we were good friends with these guys, and we'd run up there once in a while and hang out with them. And so I'm at the shop one night, and we're pulling this thing apart. And my buddy Charlie.
The cat really likes you tonight. Yeah,
I can tell.
He likes your voice or something. He keeps coming back.
Yeah, here's my tail. So I'm up in the shop working on this thing after work, and good friend of mine, Charlie Treadwell from Newark. Stark, he comes rolling in with a truck and a trailer and a 69 Camaro. You're going to love this. RS SS, big block, 4-speed, black, white stripes, black gut. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So he brings this thing in, and they start unloading it in the trailer, and he came over to me and he handed me the title. He said, "Here." I said, "Charlie, I can't afford this. I don't have the money to pay you for this." I didn't ask you for any money, right? So he wanted the princely sum of $1,600 for this car, and I more than cleared that with a big block and a 4-speed and all this stuff I wasn't going to use. And there's two things that happened in this story, right? The first was I built a new car in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we went to Indy.
Wow.
And that meant work at 7, out at 5, shop till 1 or 2 in the morning, a couple of hours, repeat. And we got this thing done. I had one chance. I took the Maple Grove, and I had one chance to shake it down. And we take this thing to Indy, and I'm going through tech and going, nope, that's wrong. And nope, that's wrong. Anyway, long story short, the drive to do that is something that stuck with me my entire life.
Yeah.
Right. Because there was a crossroads, and I could have done it a little easier. Right. Instead of, I wanted to run that class again. So that meant I had to get rid of all the hideaway headlights. The tail lights were dead, because in those days when you ran super stock, the car had to be, it had to look like what it was. So disc brakes come off, the grill and the headlights come off, tail lights get changed. So there's all this time and expense that I'm doing this because I'm so hard-headed at the time that I got to do this. But the drive stuck with me my entire career. That car went faster than the red car ever did. And we had some local success with it, but I was sitting at home one night watching TV in a dark room, just at the end of the day, and I got tired of getting my ass handed to me, and I'm going, you're not in a position to be doing this. I mean, it's really rough. I mean, at that time I had the car, I had a ramp truck, I had everything that goes with it at 19 years old. You could do that on $5 an hour back then. Sold the car, sold the truck, sold everything, and I was still going to drag races and whatnot with some friends of mine. So we were there every weekend anyway. And I had a friend of a friend that worked at Hearst, and because I was probably 35, maybe 40 minutes from Warminster, and she called me one day and she said that, because I raced with her aunt and her uncle. That's how I knew her. And she said they're looking for a customer service manager at Hearst. I never, ever, before then or after then, wanted something so bad in all my life.
And how old were you at this time?
22.
Oh,
so
wow.
2 years later. I was 22 years old. Maybe 23, but right in that general vicinity. So long story short, I get the job. I take I had moved on from the Chevrolet dealership to actually driving truck over the road. That was the thing to do at the time. Let you wear a cowboy hat and a chain drive wallet, and it was all good. Figured out in a year that wasn't for me. And this Hearst thing came up. So I took I think a $3,000-$4,000 pay cut to go there. I wanted it that bad. I mean, living at home, I don't have anybody to support, so I did it. And it went pretty quick. I was there a total of 10 years. I went in as a customer service manager and I tell my youngest, who just graduated college, when we're talking about going out and getting a job, I said, if you think that I showed up at 50 West Street Road one Monday morning and knew what the hell I was talking about, I didn't know jack nothing.
That's where that fake it till you make it comes along again.
Fake it till you make it, right? Yep. But I knew enough that I could do that. But that's where I really cut my teeth in business, because in that 10 years.
But walking in that place, Hearst, I mean, still, I'm 53 years old, and walking in some of these big companies like that, my eyes still get, glassy eyes. And that had to have been absolutely amazing to walk in at that age to some place like Hearst.
That place was magic, right? I mean, it just, the address was magic. The brand was magic. The people, sometimes in working there, listening to the stories of the guys that were there for a long time, sometimes I felt maybe I was born 10 years too late, because they sound like they had a really good time back then. We had an okay time too. We had a good time doing it, but every facet of that business in 10 years, I touched, meaning that we had Hurst, we had Schieffer, we had Earhart, we had T-tops, we had the rescue tool, we had a line of motorcycle wheels called Hallcraft out of San Diego, and I product managed every one of those lines for some.
You said the rescue tool, Hurst. I kind of forgot about that. It was like a Jaws of Life thing that Hurst made,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
It was a different building, but yeah, that was part of the portfolio. So next thing I know, man, I'm standing at the Daytona 500, talking to Bobby Allison, and it dawned on me very quickly, right? You walk in there and you're starry eyed and you're meeting all these people, and then you sit there and you chat with them for a while, and you figure out they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. I mean, great guys. It was a different time, but between cup races, modified races, drag races, we were very. I mean, I spent 7-8 months on the road, just back and forth doing that stuff. My last 3 years there, I was the director of marketing, and man, most of that was self-taught, and I didn't admit that then, but I'll admit it now. And we did a lot of good things in the industry. We were way ahead of a lot of people in the industry just because of the size of the company. When I joined, that company was owned by Sunbeam. We could get a deal on toasters if we needed them, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my first exposure to big corporate, slow moving, figure out how to get around the rules, get your way. I mean, all these things were instilled in me as I was very young, and they all came in handy over the course of the next 25, 28 years. And so I decided things were getting a little dicey around there. We had sold the company to a gentleman by the name of Dick Chrysler. Dick Chrysler started out working when they were building Hemi Cudas and Hemi Darts at Hurst in Detroit. He was sweeping the floors, and X amount of years later, 25 years later, he owned the place. And Dick owned a company in Brighton, Michigan called Cars and Concepts. And so like the first Mustang convertibles were all built there. K-car convertibles were built there. They'd bring them in, no roof on them, and they'd run them down the assembly line. We built the Hurst.
I don't know. If you build convertibles, when you say, I made K-car convertibles, would you put that on your resume anymore?
No. No. It was a means to an end.
Yeah.
And then so this was 83. Dick owns the company now, and he decides that he wants to go drag racing, and he wants the best people. He wants his own engine. He wants all these things. And Dick was one of those guys that what Dick wanted, Dick got. And so we came this close to hiring Glidden. I mean, this close.
Yeah.
Ford wasn't going to let him go. So we actually had a short list. It was Glidden and Warren Johnson.
So he was putting together a pro stock team.
Thank you. So we hired Warren, and at the same time, we got 2 more years of Hurst Oldsmobiles. So the black car in '83, the silver anniversary car in '84. We built 3,300.
I still think one of the black Warren Johnson black car is still one of my top 10 favorite drag cars.
Absolutely, that car was just so badass. It just was. Right. It shouldn't have been a race car, and I got to tell you a story about that too. So in Philadelphia, I'm doing the cylinder head. We're working on the cylinder heads, getting them cast. The block is done in Detroit. The The car was built by Willie Rails in San Diego. And all this came together in about 6 or 7 months. And we were building the engines on prototype tooling. Had a lot of leakage problems in the beginning with the cylinder heads. They were very porous. But we finally got to a point where if you were following drag racing in that time, there was a lot of Oldsmobile powered cars in Pro Stock. Every one of those cars that had an Oldsmobile engine in it came through me.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can well imagine all the friends that I had at the time. Yeah. But the black car, was just, Warren Johnson is a freaking genius in many ways. Loves the engine part of it, but he's not too bad around suspension and cars too. So we get his car built, car comes back, we put a motor in it. We're going to Atlanta Dragway for the races. Thing's been down the track 2 times. Lets the clutch out. Thing goes 877 and 177 miles an hour. Puts it on a pole. First shot.
Wow.
Thing's going pretty good, right? And the problem with that car was we didn't quite know it at the time, but that notch back window in that thing. When I tell you that thing was a kite at about 1,000 feet, it wanted to fly. And so we load everything up and we go to and so we're building Hurst Oldsmobiles, right? That's what funded the program. We got so much per car. And so we load this thing up and we go to the GM Tech Center in Warren, Michigan, to the wind tunnel. And at that particular time, you didn't put race cars in the corporate wind tunnel.
Yeah.
No, we didn't get that memo. So anyway, we roll the car in. We've got this black cover for it in case anybody. And we had a guy upstairs watching, and they're bringing a tour in, and all of a sudden we had to cover it up and just stand around and nothing to see here, just keep moving on. And at 180 miles an hour, that thing made 400 pounds of lift in the back. That car was dangerous. Anybody else driving that car besides Warren, I mean, he was just a natural at it. So anyway,
luckily Pro Stock wasn't running 200 mile an hour at that time.
Yeah, no joke, right?
Yeah.
We were running sub 180s at the time. Any faster, that would have been a problem. And so we get it to the point where it goes from 400 pounds of lift to 400 pounds of downforce, which still isn't a lot, but at least that's an 800 pound swing, and at least it's pushing the car down, not trying to pick the car up. So we run this thing. We run this thing on in the wind tunnel. We do everything legal on it, and then we start doing the illegal stuff.
You have to say allegedly. You have to say allegedly.
No, it's okay. There's enough time under that's rolled under. But we did it. We did it to see what would work, what wouldn't work. So there's 2 wind tunnels here in Mooresville. And they're run by a guy by the name of Gary Akers. And Gary was the guy on the console that day at GM. I run into him once in a while in town, and we chat about that. But so the car started doing really, really well. The engine parts got better. We managed to get out of there without getting really caught and things. But it was one of those things that I think well, at least for me, it instilled in me that you did whatever it took to get whatever it is, whatever something is, you do whatever it takes. So that was 2 years of, they were 2 great years of my life, and just running around drag strip to drag strip. We won Indy with that car. No, we won Indy with the silver car, not with the black car. First win in the black car was OCIR at Orange County at the World Finals. Remember Warren coming up and he says, "I don't know who's more relieved, you or me," because I'm sitting there writing all these checks and trying to figure out, trying to justify what we're doing with that thing. So that all went well till about 1986. The Hurst Olds thing was over. Warren moved on. GM picked him up, and as you know, goes without saying, he had a successful career after that. And I was getting, I don't know, bored, I guess. There were certainly rumors about the company being sold, and you know how. Sorry, weather's coming. So Dick Chrysler decided he wants to run for Congress, and he sells the company, and he sells it to Joe Rudka. I had quit. I'd resigned 3 days before they announced that, and and I was going to go on and do some other things with Super Press, and in the t-shirt and the soft goods business at the time. Super Press had 90% of Cup drivers at the time under contract to do their wearables.
Oh wow!
We had a huge portion of World of Outlaws guys, and we had most of the IndyCar guys at the time. I mean, we were printing money, right?
So real quick on the Hearst thing, when Horedka bought it, did it stay on the East Coast then, or did he move it to California when Horedka bought it? Because wasn't he always a West Coast guy?
No, Horedka was Cleveland. They basically I mean, I look back on it now, I'm not quite sure how anybody could think through this, but that building was 164,000 square feet. That was a big ass building. We did everything in there, including chrome toward the end. I mean, we had our own chrome line. We had 40, 50, 60 ton presses in there. Like you look at a Hearst, stick, right? Starts out round. You smash it flat except for the top. So round to flat. And we were as vertically integrated as you could be. We didn't do much on the outside. So whoever was in charge of the move, they literally backed tractor trailers up, fired everybody. Didn't fire me because I already quit. So that's a different story. Back trailers up, just literally just pushed stuff onto these tractor trailers. And when they showed up at Cleveland, they pushed it all out, and they figured they were going to figure it out. It took them about 4 years to figure it out. Wow. And I'm not sure they ever really.
That time, he owned Mr. Gasket at that time,
He
right?
owned Mr. Gasket at the time.
So then it comes underneath that umbrella.
Yes. And so that was it. That was bittersweet for me. I figured the shirt business, it might have been a nice diversion, right? Because I knew the business itself needed help. It didn't have the structure it needed. It didn't have the programs it needed. It was just hand them out, print, make money. So my job there was to get this thing back online to where we were making really good money, and we weren't. Everything wasn't a fire drill. No. And I had known Neil Marr since I was probably 14 or 15 years old. So we had a history, and did that for about 2 years, and the parts business came calling again. And I got a call from a guy by the name of Jerry Hatch. I don't know if you remember Jerry or not, but
I don't think so.
The stories get better as we go, and he hired me twice throughout his career. And I said, "You didn't learn the first time, did you?" So long story short, I interviewed with all these people, and so Neil puts this thing together for me, and off we go for about 2 years. And then when Jerry called, it was about operating.
What was that place called?
For Jerry?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, for B&M. This is when B&M started.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was 10 years at Hearst. It was 2 years at maybe 2.5 years at Super Press. And then B&M, I was there 17 years. before I left out of that.
And B&M was located where at this time?
Chatsworth, California.
Okay, so you moved to the West Coast then?
Nope. I never I've managed to never live in California.
Wow. Lucky.
In Pennsylvania, I would go out there. Well, everything. First of all, 80% of the business was my side of the Mississippi River. Okay.
Yeah.
The fact that it was made there, the fact that it was sitting in Southern California was because that's where the brothers lived. That's where they were from. Mm-hmm. We got to a point where we came this close to moving it after when was the Northridge quake? I don't know if that was 86 or 87. We nearly lost. We were in two buildings right next to each other. We nearly lost one. And Bob and Donnie just said, it's getting too expensive out here. The earthquake thing, all the things that people, especially businesses, leave California for. So we were on about a 7-month quest to find out where the new home was. And they narrowed it down to 2. Spring Hill, Tennessee.
Huh. Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Right down the road from me.
Right. And Statesville, North Carolina, right up the road from me. So I've managed to live near both of those places, but at the end, they just changed their mind. They just didn't, the California lifestyle thing was stronger than the need to move the business. Mm-hmm. It's okay. And so we worked for 2 years getting that.
What was your title when you first went to B&M?
I was the national sales manager for B&M, and when I left there, I was a VP of sales and marketing, and I managed to do all that remotely. At the end at B&M, I had 7 people in Pennsylvania. We ran the whole sales operation, and we did it 2,300 miles away.
And about what year was this?
This would have been 2000.
Oh, okay.
I started
ask
there.
A stupid question. I still thought we were like in the early 90s, and I was thinking about.
Let me back up.
I'm trying to remember when email started.
Yeah, let me back up. 89 is when I started at B&M. January.
So there was no email then. When did email in the internet stuff start? Early 90s, 93, 4, something like 5.
Yeah,
maybe?
somewhere in that area. I mean, you had really. I can still hear one of those 9600 baud modems, barking at you, trying to get a connection onto, right?
But
so
young people listen to this. Our niece can't figure out what did you do without cell phones? Even though as she was a little kid, we didn't have them. Then we had the bag phone, but like people take for granted now the technology. We just here we are talking on a computer right now, recording an interview with you, and we see each other. But that wasn't a thing back there to do business. You had to get on the phone or write a letter.
You had to write a letter. You had to send a fax. You had to.
Which I hear Bob Yalloway still uses fax machines. So
God forbid you had to pick up the phone and actually talk to somebody, which I'm finding today seems to be a skill set that's going away.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, sorry for the sidetrack.
That's okay. That's okay. So now we're 89, going through this thing and continuing to grow the business. And about 2003, the SPARs came to us and decided it was time to sell the business. And so the team we had there, we broke our tail for 2 years to get the thing where it needed to be. Most people think it's easy to go in and sell a business. Your business has to be ready for sale, and most aren't even close.
Yeah.
So we got this one ready to sell, and they went with a private equity firm. I'll leave the name out of it. This didn't end well, by the way. So they're the whole time I'm hearing about you're going to get a bite of the apple. There's enough here. Once this sells the next time, you retire, go do whatever you want to do. And all that was fine and well. All right, until the guys closed the deal and they decided they didn't like that remote work. Even though you can look at the work, you can look at the results of the work, and you can look at the stream of revenue, how it was growing. And when I say they didn't like it, what they didn't like paying the money they were paying. And so before it closed, I'm trying to remember, it closed in July. It closed like July 5th or 6th of that year, 2005. And I got a call from the folks at Perfection Clutch. Now you remember Zoom, I would assume. Mm-hmm. And so Perfection Clutch was located in.
That's when I think I actually met you back then at SEMA or something, was when you were part of the Zoom. BMW or B&M, because I used a lot of B&M stuff early back then too.
It could have been either one. But anyway, they wanted to reposition the Zoom brand. It had gone to nothing but a handful of part numbers, and so they send me a plane ticket to go down there. I've got all this going on one side with B&M going, I got to get the hell out of here. I can't. And this is nothing against the Spar family or Brian or any of it. This was all the new ownership. And what I've learned over the years, in terms of people acquiring companies, they'll tell you nothing's going to change, and what that means is everything's going to change. So it was I just felt it was time, and so.
Real quick on the B&M thing, that private equity didn't, and then I remember B&M went under the umbrella with Flowmaster. Was that same private equity? Or was that a different sale a little bit down the road?
Same one. So the sale of B&M happened, and then under that same private equity group, they acquired Flowmaster.
Okay.
And is there a third one in there that they acquired?
See, that's weird. You worked for two companies that now are part of the same company under the Holly banner. So
small world, buddy. It's not getting any bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, it's funny how things twist around. And fast forward, I got to tell you, the whole after 17 years of my life and doing what we did, to tell you that I left there with no hard feelings would be a non-truth. And it still pisses me off a little bit today when I think about it. But anyway, water under the bridge.
Do you have them things in your area? Carrie learned about this. They're called rage rooms, where you just go pay somebody to go in. They put safety equipment on you. The guy that invented this has to be a genius. And you go in with like hammers and baseball bats and beat the hell out of old TVs and appliances.
I'm at a part in my life where I don't get that jacked up anymore, but that would have been a hell of an idea back then.
Carrie allegedly wants to go do that. It would be a lot of fun.
I can't figure out why.
Allegedly,
yeah.
I don't do it.
So anyway, the Zoom thing was a really good opportunity. That company at the time was part of the Marmon Group. You may know the governor of Illinois by the name of Pritzker. The Pritzker family owned the Marmon Group at the time. So we were 136 companies under one umbrella.
Oh, I did not know that.
We made everything from car parts to can call hats to fixturing for Walmarts to tank cars. That's how diversified this business was. So I was the president of Zoom. They wanted me to move to South Carolina, and I didn't want to do that. I remember stepping off the plane in Florence in August.
And you're still living in Pennsylvania at this time, still through all this?
Yeah. And they didn't have a jetway, right? So you had to walk out the back of the airplane. And I got the door opened, and I got hit in the face with about 96% humidity and the smell of pine pulp. Okay, you got that picture?
Yep.
And I remember coming down the steps. Logan was 3, maybe 4. And I went, oh, hell no. I'm not doing this. So I'm not living here. I didn't say I wasn't doing this. So we go over to the factory and sitting in a room with memory serves me is about 15 people. They're eating lunch. I'm talking. Imagine that. And I remember the gentleman that hired me, a guy by the name of Jim Ott. He's sitting there in front of all these people, and he goes, "So if we're able to put this together, what's the first thing you'd do?" And honest to God, man, I didn't miss a beat. I said, "I'd move it." Seriously. I mean, I said, "Here's my shot. Let's do this," because I knew if it ever got anchored in, it would never move anywhere, right? So so he looks at me and he says, "Well, why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, look, you got this little tiny brand, and you got, Perfection was 60, 70 million in clutches at the time." I said, you got an 8-pound monkey and an 800-pound gorilla. I know who's going to win every time. And so anyway, long story short, he didn't say yes. He sends me an offer letter the next day. Money was a little off, and it said nothing about moving. And I called him and I said, this and this is a deal breaker. I hadn't quit yet. I didn't need a job. Anyway, we made it all work. Built. We're still in this house is what we built when we came down here in 2006, and we grew that business. First year we grew that business about 38%. And
so where did you move the business to?
Mooresville, North Carolina. Yeah,
because I knew you lived in North Carolina, but this was when you moved from Pennsylvania also to North Carolina.
Yeah, so we live in a little place called Sherrills Ford, North Carolina. That's by Lake Norman. Mooresville's 12 miles that way. And so
I'm going to jump ahead. Then we're going to go back to this.
That's fine.
So when you moved up here to the Nashville area when you were at RTM, you kept your house back there. Okay. I guess I maybe knew that, but maybe forgot it.
And I'm still trying to figure out how I pulled that off too, but I did. Yeah. Oh, by the way,
you did that because you knew that wasn't a permanent move.
Well, I'm not sure I was that bright, but it worked out that way. And I'll tell you one thing. That absolutely, the few moments in your life where you have rage.
Yeah.
That house in Franklin that my wife and I bought. We sold it in 2013. I just looked. It just sold for 1.5.
Oh wow!
I was nowhere near 1.5. Yeah. Nowhere near 1.5.
Yeah, that stuff was stupid up here. Yeah.
Oh, it's just nuts. But anyway, long story short,
we never got invited to the Cozzie household because was there a gate that we had to have a code or something like that? We were never invited to a family barbecue.
I thought they had you come over one time and you were supposed to serve drinks at a party.
Yeah, it was like that scene in Coming. I don't know.
Coming to America.
Yeah, Coming to America, and McDowell's invited Eddie Murphy over. Yeah, I'm parking cars. Yeah. Yep. No, he knew he wouldn't let me drive his friend's car, so he wasn't that. Anyway, okay. Now we're going back to Zoom again.
We can. Well, let's come back to RTM for real quick. When you said that you knew it wasn't a permanent move. I don't know if you realized this or not at the time, but I had pretty much had a target on my back from the day I walked in that building.
I think I did too. But you were my when I had a bad day, you were my hey, can I come in and lock the door? So I highly appreciate that. Yeah. Sometimes it was what was his first name? Bass?
Oh, Butch. Yeah.
Butch. I'd go to talk to Butch, but everybody else up there, I think there was a little path from my back for the shop to you.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and
I would agree with
not get my eyes too big on what the future could have been there.
And as things went on, I honestly really enjoyed that business. But as we started going forward, it became clear that there were things that management really didn't want to share.
Well, I think at that time too, why we're talking about RTM, like you were talking about setting up businesses to sell, because once they didn't renew my second year, it wasn't really that long after then they sold the company.
So the reality is that's why they brought me there.
Yeah.
Was to sell the business or to prepare the business to go for sale.
Which good for them. I mean, they built an amazing, the automotive TV pro stuff. They did a lot of the stuff. And I mean, I don't regret doing it. It was good and opened a lot of doors for me. But it was a feel good show. But then maybe that's why I've turned down so many other TV offers, because I wouldn't do the drama after being at RTM that they never did drama.
I was having that discussion with somebody today, actually, about the TV business. And I said, the one thing I always tried to do in the TV business was, obviously it needed to be entertaining. It needed to be realistic. And you'd always want the audience to walk away and going, didn't know that. Right. Yeah. I learned something by watching the show, whatever the nugget happened to be. And so, yeah, the drama stuff, I'm with you. I didn't have any time for that, but I learned that management wasn't going to share with me what I needed financially to fix this. Or
how long were you there?
Is the wrong word. Prepare.
How long were you there?
3 years.
Okay, I was there too. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years. And so that became pretty clear. Just didn't have a good warm feeling. So it's just like, truth be known, I'd already moved my family back here. I knew it was going to happen. And so I said, let's get Logan back here so he can start school and doesn't have to change. Obviously, we had this house, moved them back. And then I was running back and forth every Friday night, 6 hours this way. And then Sunday night, 6 hours back. Until I figured out what
let's go back to Zoom. You were in Zoom. We kind of glossed over some of that.
Let's go to Zoom, but remind me, I want to bring that back up again. So the Zoom thing, we had a great team. I had 6 people here. A great young engineer by the name of Chris Hoff. That all that kid needed was a chance. We created the first multiple disc street clutch. Everybody's got one now. Nobody had one then. And we created this thing to be drivable. My number one rule was you got to be able to drive it. It can't be an on and off switch. We got that done. And this was just at the time now where you could buy a Mustang with a chip. You could be putting 500 to the wheels without a problem. Just no problem at all. Drive right through the stock clutch. And we fixed all that. We expanded into 7 and 8 inch circle track clutches as well. We experimented with just a boatload of friction materials. I mean, it was a science experiment every day, and got this stuff in it wound up. We got it in Summit, we got it in Jegs, we got it in Keystone. All the major players, we were there. The unfortunate part of all that is that it never reached critical mass, right? Because what happened was, if you remember 2008 when all hell broke loose economy-wise, one important part: the Pritzkers had sold the entire business to Warren Buffett right before all this happened. We were a Berkshire Hathaway company towards the end. When the economy went south, I couldn't outrun it. I mean, it was going to bleed money by the end of the year, and so I get a call. I can't remember, it was Saturday night or I think it was Sunday night. My boss calls, and he said, "Hey, you gonna be in the office tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, I'm coming up. My wife's going shopping. I'll come up and see you." Hung the phone up, looked at my wife, and I said, "I'm getting fired tomorrow." Just so you know, right? So there's no surprises coming back. And that's exactly what happened. And it was an orderly sort of exit. I hung around for a couple of weeks to help them vacate the building, make sure everything. I mean, because I had 3 years of my life in this business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind that's just going to walk away and go, the hell with it, your problem now. I think the unfortunate part is if now fast forward another couple of years, it's reverted right back to the few part numbers that I talked about. It didn't have a champion in that building, and unless you have a champion for it, it's just parts.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We did a lot of good things with that. We got a lot of exposure with it. Sold a bunch of clutches. I mean, it wasn't like we weren't selling anything. I got a call one day from. I would have every clutch that we built sent to a body shop in the park there where the business was, and they would paint it plum crazy, right? Purple was the color.
Yep.
And I think at the time we were paying, I don't know, $3-4 to paint a clutch. And I get this bean counter calls me out of Chicago one day and he goes, "Hey, I'm such and such." He said, "Just looking at your bill of materials here." He goes, "We're just kind of curious, why are you spending this money to paint these things?" He says, "Perfection sells 10 times what you do, and they don't paint anything."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Really good question, right? A fair question." I said, "So when we look at perfection, guy's truck's broke, his mechanic's going to fix it. He wants it as cheap as possible. He never even sees the box, let alone what's inside. And all he knows is he comes back, he gets in, clutch works, and he's out the door." They can do that. I, on the other hand, just sold a guy this clutch for $750. And he's never going to see it again when he puts it in the car. So when he opens the box, he better say, "Wow, this is pretty nice."
And there should be a free sticker in there.
And there was a free sticker in it. Yeah. Actually, 2. we weren't skipping, man.
One for each side of the race car. Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things that and I know what I was going to do at that particular point in time. I had never been unemployed or didn't know what I was going to do.
And how old are you at this time?
So that was, let me think through this. 2005, 6, 7. So I was 46, maybe.
Okay.
Somewhere in the general vicinity, maybe 47. And I decided 2 things. That number one, that I would never rely on a single revenue stream again. And pretty much have been able to do most of that. And so I took and I did something that I probably wouldn't do it today, but I took my entire email list and wrote a letter to all these guys and saying, "Look, here's what it wasn't nasty, it wasn't ugly."
At that time, your email list is probably a pretty good online Rolodex. Like allegedly, I know a guy that is in the magazine industry, and like his supposedly email Rolodex, do we still call it Rolodex? I do, because I'm an old
guys like us do, yeah.
Is like over 1 million people. So that's pretty crazy when you think about it.
I wasn't quite that strong, but it was pretty solid. And so I started a company called Certus Partners, and Certus was an organization that we had a legal partner, we had an engineering partner, we had a business partner. And what I did with all these guys is we weren't paying them anything until something happened. Mm-hmm. And so I announced this consulting business, and I think it only took about 2 months, and I landed a huge contract with the folks at Jiffy Tight, the fitting people. Mm-hmm. Well, most people don't know about Jiffy Tight is that was a very minuscule part of their business. Like they would make all the fittings for a production car. So they were on Corvette at the time. They were on, and so they were spitting these things out, buddy, like it was cordwood. And they came to me and wanted to put that part of the business or part of that business in the radiator side of things into the aftermarket. That project took 6, maybe 7 months, and was pretty proud of it when it was done. They were they were just thrilled when it was all said and done. Did they ever put it into use? I don't know. Didn't matter. Check cleared. And they still have it. They can always go back to it if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I putzed around I had some people did some work for the folks down at Comp, did some work for Quartermaster. And then out of the clear blue sky, I get a call from Joe one day. And
you're talking Joe St. Lawrence,
yeah.
The second in charge at RTM.
Yeah, that's right. So Joe calls and he said, "Hey, what would you think about coming out here and helping us out a little bit?" I said, "Well, okay, let's."
So okay, like how did knowing Joe, which Joe and Patty St. Lawrence started RTM, did all the Hot Rod TV, all the Power Block shows, all that, which I kind of remember as the first well-known countrywide automotive program. I mean, it's amazing what they done. And so did you have a relationship with Joe through the TV shows at the other companies that you worked at?
I knew Joe when he was at Excel back in.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? That's going way back, right? I knew Joe in Excel and actually did some clothing work for him at the time. But at the same time at B&M, I bought a lot of television.
Yeah.
I believed in it. I sat down with the spars. I needed $100,000 is what I needed. And this was kind of mid budget cycle. And so I sat down with the Spar family, I did a presentation. I said, "This is what I want to do. I need $100,000 to do it. And this is everything that comes back." And I mean, there's only probably one or two answers you could get, right? Yes or no. And we got a yes. And so between Shade Tree Mechanic, RTM's programs, I'm trying to remember who else was there. We were one of the first ones to really adopt it with, a lot of times you'd come in and somebody would do one thing and then that's it. They'd go away. We were pretty much on a cadence. We were always releasing new stuff. We were always filming new stuff. And so that's where I met Joe. And Joe calls me and he said, I'll never forget this. He said, "You're the only person that walks into this place that Patty trusts." And I went, "Okay, cool." So I went out there, sat down with them, had dinner, talked about, we hammered it all out. And I consulted for them for about 9 months, maybe 10 months. And finally one day we're sitting in the conference room and, they just both leaned up and went, "Why don't you just come work here?" Right. And, all right. I mean, the problem with the consulting business, especially when you're basically a one-man band, right? So Monday morning, you're on an airplane, you're flying someplace. Thursday night, you're flying home, or Friday, you're flying home. Saturday and Sunday, you're doing all the stuff you said you were going to do to get back on an airplane Monday morning. That was not sustainable for me. I don't mind traveling, but it was just nonstop. And so at this particular time, Logan was a little bit older. I think he was 10 or 11 years old. And other than the aforementioned target on my back, and that had nothing to do with ownership. That was all, I promised I'd never use this term. That was all the other side of the wall, is where all that came from, right? Because I think what most of those guys saw was a disruptor, and it was going to disrupt the way they run their businesses.
And that place, like any production places like that. Again, I don't regret going there. It was an amazing thing, and I still get along with the people there. And if they called me to be a guest host for an episode, I'd probably go do it.
I don't talk to Joe and Patty all that much. I talk to Joe once in a while, but I mean, Tommy and there's a handful of those guys that I still converse with back and forth.
Yeah, right? I still talk to Kevin. I still talk to Ian. They're all doing great stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there was like a TV show with a casino. We called it the front of the house and the back of the house. It was a division there. So
Like you said in the beginning of this, I knew this wasn't permanent. So I had a good time for 3 years. I walked out of there with a 1 year non-compete.
Was that just in the TV world or like aftermarket automotive? Just TV?
TV world.
Yeah, see, I was one of the very rare people there, like on-air people. I didn't have a non-compete. I don't know how I got through with that because almost everybody did. I did not.
I think two things, right? It's always like when situations like that happens, people go, yeah, thank you, been here. Here's a check. Oh, not so fast. Sign here, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the check. If I knew then what I know now, and maybe things have changed, you can blow your nose with a non-compete. There's not a judge in the world that's going to keep a man from making a living.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the entire next year, I did some more consulting work, and we were chasing Brenton Productions, my business partner and I, and we're up there a couple of times. I think Frank at the time was 82. I mean, he was up there. He wanted to sell it. He wanted to do other things, and we managed to put a really nice deal together and run that company. And one thing I learned about the TV business, if you're a disruptor, you kind of have a target on your back. And wasn't a whole bunch different there.
And at that time, Brenton, what shows to let people know were you doing? Two Guys Garage?
We did.
All Girls
Two
Garage.
Guys Garage. We did Truck U. We did, that always sounds so bad coming out. We did All Girls Garage and Carfix. So we're doing 4 shows.
I was just on the Two Guys Garage. They do a podcast series too, and I was recorded last week. They haven't put out. That's my second time being on with those two guys. I like those guys.
I do too. I got uninvited to that one.
I want to jump. Say that again.
I got uninvited to that one.
Oh yeah.
They wanted me to do the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And then the heir to the business said, "No, I don't think that's a good idea."
Yeah.
I don't know what.
I want to go back. You mentioned Logan. So thankfully, like when I was in the middle of moving back and forth, there was a couple weekends that I was in Tennessee. Carrie was back in Illinois, and our good friend Brian Downard's boy from Low Car was racing go-karts or quarter midgets? Quarter midget. And I remember Logan is how old about this? 10, 11 years old?
Yeah, about that.
And he wanted to put him in the quarter midget, and he's like, I don't want nothing to do with that. He was like scared of these cars. And now Logan has been an amazing race car driver.
Pretty much. He's been.
And is he still driving?
He is. He is. We're racing. We race a Spec Miata in SCCA, and we race a S197 Mustang in endurance racing. He's got 3 wins this year in endurance racing. One 14 hours at Daytona in April. We won 2 7 hours. He won. I didn't win. 2 7 hours in South Carolina, and we're getting ready to go to Watkins Glen here in an M3 in October. So
awesome. So yeah, like when I see him, I usually run into him at SEMA or something like that, and he always comes up and he gives me a hug. And he's a great kid. So you've done another thing you've done great in your life.
Yeah,
he always remembers. I always give him when he's walking around with his other race car buddies. I always like to embarrass him. And he was scared of a go-kart when he was 10.
So quick go-kart story. So we have a place here in town called the Pit, and the Pit is an old warehouse. You've seen these around. They put an indoor go-kart track in there. And so he wants to go. So we go there and put him in his cart, and everybody goes out and they're hauling ass around there, and he's just putzing around. And I'm looking at my wife. I'm going, who's he? He couldn't be mine.
He's embarrassing the family name.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so he's always been, as he was growing up, he's always been very cautious. So I don't remember the time lapse. This was probably a year or two later. We see a Saturday night race at the pit. They're going to qualify 20 carts. And he looked at me and said, I want to go do that. Sure. You remember which one's a gas pedal? And so we go. And Logan has always been he's 6'4" today. He's a big boy. And he was big boy then in terms of height. So we get there, and they're going to qualify 20 carts. Amongst the competitors is a young man by the name of Ty Gibbs. His grandfather coach was there. Two other kids that we raced with, Ty's brother. And I remember pulling them aside and going, look, man, just you got 5 horsepower, right? And you got about 20 pounds on these kids. So go have a good time. So I'm watching this thing from upstairs looking down. And so he puts it on pole, laps the back 3, and wins it. And
awesome.
He comes back upstairs. I have the picture someplace. I got to find it. Him standing there with this checkered flag, and I'm going, shit.
Now you're like, this is going to get expensive.
This is going to get expensive.
Yeah,
he figured it out.
And he's been doing well ever since. We spent a few years in karts, transitioned to cars 2.5 years ago. I was watching him at Daytona in April. He'd never even seen the place. Never even seen it. Did a little bit of sim work that week. And you're running the high bank for three quarters of it, and then you go in the infield, and just like they do in the 24. And we were talking to him about where to position the car. Don't run the bottom when you're on the bank. Get up to the top. If something happens, not so far to get the wall and that sort of thing. And that car was coming off of 4, probably 140, 145 mile an hour coming into down the front stretch, and then into the infield, and then back up on the bank. And the first thing I noticed is by his third lap, he was up on the wall and stayed up on the wall, which has got to be kind of intimidating, especially if you never did it before. So his adaptability has improved greatly since go-kart days, and I can't tell you I have a grand plan. We're kind of taking it a step at a time and figure out we wind up where we wind up. And,
Brett's son, Brett Vogel's son, Andy's, he's working his way up racing too. So
yeah.
How old is Logan now?
22.
Okay.
22. And Andy, I think Andy's about the same age, maybe a year younger. And Andy's been doing, and I run into Andy now and again at a race event someplace, but he's doing some wheel-to-wheel stuff. I mean, I think the grid life thing is kind of like time attack. So you're not wheel-to-wheel, but he's been doing some wheel-to-wheel stuff in Phoenix and doing really well with it. And because that's a whole new ball game. When you're leaning on each other. The endurance race thing for us is so let's go back to Spec Miatas for a second. Those things, while they're robust little cars, they still haul ass with a whopping 125 horsepower. But you get a lot of young kids in there that have come through the karting world where using your vehicle as a weapon is okay. And that is something that we're seeing more and more of. And one of the things that I really like about endurance racing is that all the sanctioning bodies, they don't put up with it.
Yeah.
Right.
What endurance series does he race?
So we raced Lucky Dog, run into your girl Chelsea once in a while.
Yeah. One time I seen that he was at a race, and I messaged Chelsea. I go mess with that kid. Say, hope you drive it better than a go-kart.
So we run into Chelsea once in a while. We've run some Champ Car, and we run some WRL. And the plan for next year, I want to run most of the WRL races next year, and then we'll sprinkle the rest of them. And we've got a lucky dog coming up here September, I think, in South Carolina.
Cool.
But what I like about this is, one of my favorite sayings is when we're done, I go, well, we finished wherever we finished, so we won, we finished 6th overall, and we could still drive it in the trailer. So all those things mean something.
Yep.
I showed you a picture of this Miata. Looks like somebody shot at it and hit it. I had it all wrapped. It was a bitchin' looking car, and now it's got wheel marks in the side, stuff dented, and somebody said, "Why don't you rewrap that thing?" I go, "Why?" Nah, I'll rewrap it when it's time to sell it. But we've been having a good time doing that. We really have.
Awesome.
So
okay, now you get the call. After you leave Ride Tech.
Wait, how did you get to Ride Tech?
I didn't get to Ride Tech yet.
Oh no! I mean RTM, the other R.
Yeah.
You left RTM, and you're at Brenton now.
Consulted a year, and then we signed a deal to buy Brenton, and that too seems to be the going tenure in TV business was 3 years.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where when Frank and I put this deal together, I want to say this wrong. I really liked Frank. I respected him. I always found him a man of his word. But once we started, his oldest son showed up one day. Didn't want anything to do with the business for the last 26 years.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like what you know sometimes. And I remember the day we had an office over here in the other side of Mooresville. And the day he walked in, I went, "This is not going to be good." And I put up with it for about 15 months. And I walked in, I said, "Look, man, why don't you just write me a package? This ain't working, and let me out of here." And we did. And at that, I had been consulting, even running that TV business. I had been consulting for Brett at Ride Tech since about 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And so I call him and tell him what's going on. And he said, "Well, when are you coming up next?" I said, "Next week." He said, "Well, we'll sit and talk. We'll figure out what we're going to do." And so I consulted for him for another, that was 13, 14, I think till about 15 or 16. And then I finally joined on the payroll. He had gotten serious about wanting to move on, right? He just felt that it was time. He did all he can do with it. It was going to take a lot of capital to get it where it is today.
Which he built an amazing. I've known him since two companies before he did Ride Tech. I knew him when he worked for BDS, and then the trailer program where I met him. We worked out of the Red Trailer.
The World of Performance. That's where I met him. I met him there at the drag races. So I've known him for a lot of years. And I had never been there. I went up there on a Sunday. I told myself I'll come in a day early so there's not a bunch of people around. And I remember walking into the building, and I was immediately taken back how neat and organized and undirty that place was for a manufacturing business. And we chatted for 4 or 5 hours, and like I said, signed a consulting contract with him. I didn't want to quite jump on the payroll yet because I had some other things I was working on that allowed me the freedom to do that. And until it was time to get the thing ready to go. And so that took us about 2.5 years to get it where it needed to be. He didn't like saying, "No, you can't spend that. You can't do that." Why? It's mine. I said, "Yeah, I know, but." So then we come into the era of Fox.
Mm-hmm.
We had been a customer of Fox for 10 years. They knew who we were. We knew who they were. And we just started having conversations. BJ Elmore, who worked for him at the time, as well as the GM, and we flew up to Manhattan and sat down with the the folks there that work through acquisitions. And it took something that should have been easy, took about 17 months to get it done, but we got it done. And Brett's never looked back. He's just loving life in Phoenix. And God bless. I still talk to him about once a month.
I remember when that news came out, I seen Andy at another event, racing or something. And I go, dude, that was kind of a surprise to me. I was like, I thought you'd be the boss man someday. And Andy looked at me. He goes, I kind of thought so too. He said, so yeah, everybody was a little surprised on that. But now knowing, I know a lot of people probably seen that coming of your history of helping get companies ready, that when you came on, they probably figured that out a little bit, didn't they?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you the point I'm proudest of in that transaction. We went 17 months and never got a question. Never people not raising their eyebrows going, what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
We never had a bunch of suits show up and walk around the building. If they showed up, I don't care what T-shirt you wear and what jeans you wear, but yeah, no tie. And so when we closed on May the 4th, 2019. We invited everybody to dinner in the building. You've been there, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So over in the Fab Shop, over in the bar and grill there, we invited everybody, and then Fox wanted to do this. They brought all these lifted trucks in and people and music and all this stuff, and
which wasn't the employees there. That's not out of the ordinary, because that area, they would have seminars, and that's where they filmed the 48-hour TV or the 48-hour builds, and so it wasn't. Probably wouldn't have been weird at that time to see different stuff going on.
This is all hearsay, but you could even maybe find a half a gallon of Jim Beam over there once in a while and some ice. But that's all rumor.
Allegedly.
Definitely on Carson Coast.
Allegedly. So we announced to the people that Brett and Sharon have the new owners are Fox. It didn't go over bad, but it certainly didn't go over great. And there's something about the workforce there that they do things the way they do things, and change is sometimes a bit difficult for them. People handle change in different ways. And so the first year and a half, I think everybody was trying to get their feet under them because everything changed, right? So now you're going to go from this health insurance to this health insurance. Now you're going to go from this scheduled vacation plan to this one. And I can tell you that in every case, it was improved, right? People made more money. People had way better health insurance. All the benefits were there. Bonuses were there. I mean, it's the difference between an entrepreneurial company and $1.5 billion corporation, right? There's just more there. So everybody, I was the only one at the time that had any corporate experience. So, after the Pritzker group, you couldn't surprise me. You just couldn't. And you dealt with it the best you can. But I think in the long run, it's been really good for the brand. We're twice as big as we were 4 years ago.
Awesome.
Right.
Has it been 4 years now since the sale?
Been 4 years. Actually, 5 years, 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, because we just renewed the lease with Brett. It's a 5-year lease. Honestly, I think it couldn't have done what we did with it if Brett, and he realized that. He said, look, I don't want to put any more money in this. I don't want to go through 2008 again, because it came that close. And he and Sharon had to pump a bunch of money back in it to keep it afloat. We got it done. I still remember, like, the day after the close, the paperwork, guys, I kid you not. I mean, it like this. It was like you didn't do it by page, you did it by the pound. And so, the attorneys made money, and there was a lot of expense that it goes along with that sort of endeavor. Brett, we're sitting in Brett's garage one night after the close, and allegedly there might have been some bourbon in there too.
Anybody that knows Brett, you don't really have to say allegedly.
So we're sitting in the garage, and we're having a little taste, and we're talking about, because they gave him a position. He worked on the engineering side of things, and I remember sitting there going, "You ain't gonna last a year. You just won't." He made it 2.
Yeah.
And what part of the change of being completely nimble and agile and being able to pivot on a dime, that doesn't live there anymore. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the size of the ship. And, but people are making great money. We're making really good parts.
I remember a story that when his biggest guys in the shop, I'm friends with a lot of guys, still friends with a lot of guys that work there, and they said one of his biggest eye-opening or slap was his race cars. And that he had the spots, he worked on the race cars. Then all of a sudden they said, you can't have your race cars here because this isn't your business anymore. And he's like, oh, yeah, kind of makes sense at that point, right?
Well,
so the race program, the autocross stuff changed a little bit after that. Yeah,
it wasn't just the race cars either, right? So like when you walked in the fab shop, right? When you walked in the fab shop, you remember the bar and grill's on the left, right? There was a basketball hoop in there that they used to play basketball at lunchtime. And then if you turn to the right, that whole corridor of building had cars in it. It wasn't even race cars. The race cars were over the left.
Right.
All that had to go. Yeah. And so the difference to be twice as big, you can't find any concrete in that building anymore, except the walkway. I mean, it is covered. Yeah. And then we just leased another, can't remember, it's 25 or 30,000 square feet that sits next property over, so diagonal to where Ride Tech is. We're just out of room. And some of the expansion things that are going on right now are going to require more space. And so not quite, I don't have the answer to that yet, but we're working on it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've used Ride Tech. Cool thing, I want to get Brett on here because Brett, as I say, I knew him before he started Ride Tech. I remember when he did the Mustang Pro Street car. So I've seen him grow, and he was the first guy that signed me up to have a dealer program for my shop, that I'll always be in debt and thankful to him that he signed me up without a buy-in. He gave me a dealer program for my one-man Strange Motion shop. So it was pretty awesome, and he supported me a lot through the years. So yeah, I owe a lot to that man. Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it the same way. We have a long history. We didn't work together, and obviously until here. And you should get him on here. He's a great talker. And
I kind of wait because he was just on the Jeff Smith one, the Car Guys Confession ones, which I listened to. So I kind of wait, and then a couple guys that I want to try to get on have been on the Roadster Shop one. So I don't want them back to, but we just did Dave Shutton this week, and then they put out a Car Confession one with him today. We try to space out.
Yeah,
we all want to talk to the industry awesomeness, but we just kind of wait a little bit in between. So I'll get Brett eventually.
So from a business standpoint at Ride Tech, I was able to put in there wasn't a lot of process in there or a lot of policy in there, and I'm not trying to make it a corporate entity before it was one, but as you grow, you got to do these things, or it just gets itself out of hand. And so over the past 5 or 6 years, we've been building the customer base. The product development has been amazing. I don't know if you saw that independent rear suspension that we did for a Fox Body Mustang.
Yep.
And that thing has taken off.
That's being tested now. I got the update. I always go. That's one of my spots. I got to stop and hang out with the guys. I know where the cooler of water is and all that stuff. So I stop by and visit with Jason and the other guy in the trailer. I blank on his name. What's the other guy on the trailer program?
Aaron now. Aaron.
We have the same taste in music, so we always talk about what bands we've seen recently. So that's my stop
Aaron.
to hang out with my ride tech buddies.
So I think that some of the things we're doing, and not to be a tease, but there's a couple of things we're doing. I just, you have me on again sometime and we'll talk about it. But I can't talk about it right now. You'll like it. Trust me.
Cool.
Awesome.
So that sort of innovation is what has really, really popped up because before, when you were doing older muscle cars, it was easy to sit around and say, hey, you know what? We don't, nobody out there has a 65, 67 Galaxy. We need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we would, right? And then, because I always used to joke about Ride Tech. Ride Tech sells a lot of things, but it doesn't sell a lot of any one thing. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The collective is a huge number.
Yeah.
Individually, you're doing 10 of this a year or 50 of this a year, but you're not doing anything in the thousands. So one of the things that we've gotten pushed to, pushed is the wrong word. We've evolved to in looking at knowing that Fox is a growth company. That's what they do, right? You don't get to sit there and say, well, we almost got them. We'll get them next year. It's a constant management of your business. I mean, constant, right? So where everything is, what lever's being pulled, what you have, what you don't have, where the money is, how far off we are, if we're up, we're down, profit margins out the door, on time out the door. We measure all those metrics. And one of the things that was pretty clear to me in the beginning, but this business isn't going to grow the way Fox expects it to grow on just hot rods.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's got a ceiling on it. And the reason it was the size that it was because that's what we did. So we're doing things now, like we're doing rear end housings. We're working on some additional chassis pieces that'll come out here pretty quick. We've developed lowering kits for F-150s, Rams, and GM trucks, and that F-150 kit happens to be on that Shelby Super Snake that Tuscany builds, so it's OE on those trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And today, for years and years and years, our number one selling item was a first generation F body.
Yeah.
Today it's number 2. There's an F-150 went in front of it.
Oh wow!
It's amazing how many of those things go out the door. Now, remember when I said we don't sell a lot of anything? That's become the exception. And so if you look at our approach from a marketing standpoint, and maybe it's something that you just kind of gloss over and glance at, but if you really start paying attention to it, it goes out like this, right? It's not just Camaros, it's not just F-150s. We are trying to appeal to a very wide band.
Mm-hmm. It's not just Mustang 2 kits anymore.
No. Like this Mustang kit we did for this Fox body. I mean, that was a 1.5 year long project. The back end's pretty cool, but the front end's really badass. I don't know if you've seen the front end with it.
Yeah.
Little tiny control arm on the top, and car handles like a slot car when we're all done and have it set right. So there's more of that coming on a late model, and you got to think about the numbers. Every year they put 300,000-400,000 F-150s on the street.
Mm-hmm.
How many 67 Camaros are going on the street?
Yeah. I said that the other day of, one time I built a 63 Buick Riviera. And it had shock. No, it had bags on it from
bags
right
on
there.
it, yeah.
But anyway, somebody's like, well, why did you build a 63? Because some people like the 65s better and stuff. And I go, well, at that time, that was the newest car you could take to a Good Guys show, was a 63.
Yeah.
That was the late models. And now on Friday and Saturday to Good Guys show, you can take up to a 1999. Next year will be rolling to 2000.
Just rolls up every year. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's crazy that a 2000 vehicle will be allowed all 3 days at a Good Guys show, not just on Sundays. So it does make me feel old. So.
Well, I am old, so you got a ways to go. You're still a child. I do think that one of the things that you have to balance here is when you've come from doing nothing but hot rods for all these years, and now there's new things that are coming, later model vehicles that are coming, dealership business that's attached to this. You have to be very, very deliberate in your messaging. That because a lot of businesses will just swing like a pendulum. Well, today we're doing hot rods, and tomorrow we're going to do salsa. And we're very, very deliberate in making sure.
No, Carrie, we're not doing salsa. She loves salsa. We're not doing salsa.
Very, very. It looks like she likes salsa.
I love salsa.
You like salsa?
I love it.
As long as it's attached to a taco, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go. See,
I know if I have the salsa, I know what's coming next.
A taco will magically appear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
That's
I'm going
right.
to dinner with you. But I think your messaging for your customer base has to be carefully curated, that you're not abandoning what brought you here. And that's, believe me when I tell you, we still sell plenty of Gen 1 F-body stuff and Chevelles. And I look at the numbers and I'm going, I never built that many cars. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it all goes, but that messaging.
You can get a reproduction body of those now too. So
yes. And I think that's part of what will perpetuate this business, is that as they get to a point where I'm sure you see it all the time, somebody brings you something in and go, I can fix a lot of stuff, but this one might be a stretch from a body standpoint. So the fact that you can buy brand new stuff, and the fact that brand new stuff has really improved over the years. I remember the first one we did at RTM. That thing was horrible. Yeah. Today, they're pretty good. They really are. So.
And now, of course, as I said, the industry's changing with the years. Good Guys just at Columbus a couple of weeks ago debuted next year's giveaway car. It's a Monty SS Aero Coupe. And I said it on the microphone because I was helping MC, and I go, Gary Metters is turning over in his grave right now.
Yeah.
Because, the one they just gave away that weekend was a 32 Ford. And I remember years, allegedly, in there helping judge Street Machine and Street Rod of the Year when they kick everybody out and close the doors. Gary would only go look at the street rods to judge, and he wouldn't even go to the Street Machines. But he accepted them because he knew the market growth of letting the later model cars in, but he would not be happy that they were doing a Monty SS Aero Coupe. It's really cool. I like it, but yeah.
So can I go back real quick on a Hearst Old story?
Yeah.
So remember we were talking about the wind tunnel, and the thing had 400 pounds of lift and all that. So we're standing in the R&D center at Hearst one day, and my black car was in there. We were doing some suspension work on it and whatnot. I'm standing there staring at this thing, and I'm going, why couldn't we put a window on this thing, make this thing a fastback, right, and get rid of all this lift? And then we're sitting there, and it's amazing sometimes when you come up with a really good idea, how you talk yourself out of it. And right, this is about an hour of discussion, but that ain't never going to work. And
but could you have done that in the NHRA Pro Stock? You couldn't. It pretty much had to stay stock bodied then, though. You couldn't have put a bubble back window.
It did, but where I was going with this is that somebody on the NASCAR side figured it out.
Yeah,
and they had that arrow, and that's what popped it into my mind. Had that arrow.
They had to sell 3,000, or it was a pretty small number of what they had to sell.
It wasn't even that many, right? I think it was 500 of each is what they had to sell.
Okay.
So the reality is we could have done that at some point in time. But anyway, I just when you that idea just popped into my head when you said Aero Coupe.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole podcast just on your time being around those race cars for them a couple years. Yeah,
man,
very cool.
It was an education you could not pay for.
And in that time of drag racing, it was still kind of what can we do? Now it's kind of not really cut and dried and stuff, but the pro stock cars, I still love door slammers. They all kind of look like the same. Most of them are all running Camaros, and at that time in pro stock, there was different bodies, and they weren't all running the same thing.
Different bodies, different engines.
Yeah.
I had taken in that time period. Modified eliminator was huge. You got a heavy car. You got 277 cubic inches. You got a 50-pound flywheel. You put it to 9,500. You let the clutch out. Right. I mean, none of that should ever work, but it did.
Right. Yeah.
And there were huge amounts of clutch issues that took place at the time, both in pro stock and because the clutches, the multi-disc and the slipper stuff they used didn't find its way into those cars till later on, right? You look at a clutch in pro stock today, it looks like something out of a Top Fuel car, just smaller. Mm-hmm. So at national events, we would set up with Schieffer. I had a rolling workstation that had clutch machine and every blessed thing you need to build clutches. And I still have it around here someplace. I had this little brown book that I need to find it and start going through it to see all the names were in there, because I was going in there where people were thinking that, with all the aforementioned 50-pound flywheel and all that happy stuff, they were running 3,000, 3,200 pounds. I mean, you push the clutch pedal and it's trying to push the crank out the front, right?
Yeah.
So started playing with it a little bit, and I think the first guy that we tried this with, there's a guy by the name of Garley Daniels. He's out of North Carolina, ran a C Super modified Chevy too. And that thing would just stand itself up every freaking time. So I built him a clutch that had 1,000 or 1,100 pounds of static in it, and weighted the arms. So in other words, the car would hit the tire, but it wouldn't annihilate the tire. Mm-hmm. And so when we started taking this to pro stock and the technology, the coatings and the friction material that was available at the time, we were it. I mean, we were just doing really marvelous stuff. I would build 40 clutches a weekend, going to the races. I mean, it was pretty serious stuff. But as I left Hearst, that whole clutch thing went away, and then coming back to Zoom was kind of like a homecoming. I'm sitting over here. I'm just staring at my case over here. There's still a 7-inch painted Zoom circle track clutch sitting in there to remind me.
Yeah, and purple. Had to be purple.
Had to be purple.
Yeah.
Had to be purple.
So you're still at Fox Ride Tech. You're not doing any of the consulting on the side. You're just
Yeah, I keep the LLC alive, and I pick up a project here or there, but nothing. The demand on time today is of such that there's no time to do it and do your client any justice.
Because you got to go with Logan Racing,
and that too.
Yep.
I think that my two older children, Logan and his brother, are 15 years apart, and Logan and his sister are 19 years apart. So Logan grew up as an only child.
Yeah.
And because they were grown, gone, had lives of their own. And when I was growing up and climbing the ladder, and the first two, I don't want to say I was a bad parent, but I was gone more than I was home. And
so you didn't take them racing, so they know that Logan's your favorite.
have you been talking to my son? Well, I told him one day we were all at the house in Pennsylvania when I mean it was Travis was 15 when he found out his mother was pregnant again. I mean he was just mortified, and so they were talking about something about we were doing a nursery or something, and they were talking about we never had any of that. And I said, well, let me explain something to you guys. That you can take all the stuff that you had and you can take all the stuff that you had and you can match it up and it's probably not going to equal what this one has because I'm at a different point in my life.
Yeah.
I have one of them to worry about. Financial situation is different. So, and before you guys start whining and carrying on, you raced mountain bikes, you had horses. Don't give me this stuff just because you see a race car now.
We sponsor BMX race kids and mountain bikes, other than hospital bills that Carrie's been injured here recently.
Yeah. By the way, how you doing? You okay? You back to almost normal? Yeah, good.
I am. I got the go ahead today from my doctor.
She's still got some hand issues, but yeah, she got released from all the other stuff, so it's been 2 months.
I want to know if anybody got it on tape. That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah.
Because it was at a BMX national, so yeah, we tape each other's laps all the time. That's what when we went to the emergency room, I was like, "You want to see a video?" Because they're looking at me. She wrecked her bicycle. They're looking at me like I pushed her down the stairs, but we don't have stairs. And so I was like, "You want to see a video?" So I showed them the video. Then they got her right in because then she crashed so hard they were worried about internal stuff. But
it was actually the live feed that got the most because it was like right there.
Yeah, the live feed on the internet at these races, it was right there. It's like crashing at Indy 500 right up the start line.
do they live feed the whole event?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, we do the same thing. And, one of the things, I'll put my business hat back on for a minute. One of the things that I see as an issue in all forms of racing, maybe take away anything that has television. You take away anything that has television, the value changes dramatically. And one of the things that they do in endurance racing is there's a handful of cars that have live feed in them. And I'm trying to think. I can't remember. I think Lucky Dog and I'm sorry, Champ Car and WRL. They have announcers that they're there for the whole time and live feeding it. I need to figure out how to make that more. Hello, Kitty. More.
He's thinking you guys are still talking.
There ain't a person in the world that's going to believe this.
But the cat keeps showing up?
Yeah, the cat keeps showing up.
Yeah, this is
he likes to talk sometimes.
Yeah, this is a common occurrence on our podcast that
I think it's great.
We put out what it was hot rods, customs, BMX, and cats that we talk about on our podcast.
I think it's great. I like it.
They thought I spelled it wrong. I thought it was supposed to be cars. I said, no, it's cats.
Yeah. But at the BMX, the live feed, at everyone except the Grand Nationals, they just have like three stationary cameras because it's the same three corners. They just kind of cover about 3/4 of the track and the finish line and stuff. And at the Grands, they actually have a few guys running the camera, but pretty simple live feed because it's not a big, it's not like they have 10,000 people at home watching.
No, I mean, the thing about live feed is when you start looking back on it, it's got a really long tail. It just plays and plays and plays and plays. During the course of the race, if you have 1,000 people watching, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody that's a rabid enough fan that's going to sit there for 14 hours and watch a race online. So I get that part of it, but to take and be able to monetize that, we've done a lot of work sponsorship wise and making sure that we deliver back. I mean, we're not talking tons of money here, but we've got a lot of good partners, and that's what makes it work. And I certainly have drilled into Logan's head. I mean, this goes back even to the go-kart days. We always had businesses on our cars. That no matter what, you got to do it better. You got to do more than you said you were going to do. You got to give them value. You've got to, every Monday, Tuesday at the latest when we get back, he puts a race report together, good, bad, or indifferent. It goes to I think that list of partners now is 15, 18 long, something like that.
But now you can send an email. Back when I started doing this, like when Brett early on Ride Tech helped me on some cars, we'd make a letter and send it in the mail as an update, before emails come around. So yeah, man, wow, I sound really old.
Even in the B&M days, we had some communications, right? You had an old green screen computer. I could go into the mainframe. I could do what I needed to do, but that was it, right? Everything else was, what we said, fax, phone, no email. And when it started coming, boy, it was a revelation, to say the least.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that email and technology has done is they're supposed to make your life easier. They don't. They make your life more full, right? It just allows you to do more things than you would ever do. I look at
Carrie's just got messages from her boss that wants to talk to her while we're doing this podcast. Yeah. So
tell him, not only that, we also have a storm coming.
Yeah.
And my alert keeps going off too.
Oh, do we? So, that means the other cat's hiding in the bathroom then.
I keep looking at it because I'm like, should we take cover? Like, what's going on?
If that's Jimmy, just tell him you got a bigger name on the other line.
It's Wally, but yeah.
That's Wally. Tell him too.
Definitely bigger name.
Yeah.
So I think the status of the industry is changing. Good. It's not bad. But trying to look out. Think about this for a second. We have only one car left that's being built in a Mustang. Camaro's going away. Charger, Challenger, and they may come back in another iteration, but they're going away. The truck business, and hence why the truck business is so large. You may, I think I mentioned the Tuscany and the Shelby Super Snake. We have 3 operations that upfit trucks, and between those 3, I think we put something 7,000 vehicles out. We are, we've just announced a strategic partnership with Vaughn Gittin Jr. and RTR. We're going to build some Mustangs, hopefully before the end of the year.
Cool.
But my point to this is that we want to keep that one alive. But when you think out over the bow, right, and not the hot rod business, and not, did she claw you? Not the hot rod business.
He don't bite very often.
He doesn't. Dang it.
Not so much just the hot rod business, but if you look at, if you were to take the automotive aftermarket as a whole, it's getting harder and harder, man. It just is. First of all, when Brett started doing suspension on 60s and 70s muscle cars, and I don't want to minimize what he did, but it was pretty easy to be a hero. I mean, those things were terrible. So not so much from the engineering or the ingenuity, but the fact that they were so bad. I mean, I tell Logan all the time, the fact that my misspent youth was in Camaros and Roadrunners, and both of them were relatively fast. But that car did nothing but go fast. It didn't do anything else good. It didn't go around.
So have you ever put Logan out on a track in a stock first gen Camaro? Let him know the difference. You ever tried that?
No. But that's not a bad idea.
Then he would be very appreciative of what.
Yeah, he would learn many things about shocks and tires.
So we did glass over one thing, talking about industry in a whole.
Yeah.
What years were you part of the SEMA organization?
So 96, I was the chairman of the Motorsports Parts Manufacturers Council, which is still alive today. And then in, 96, probably about 99 or 2000, I was elected to the board.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time they were 2-year terms. I served 2, and then I ran for chairman and I won that. So that sort of cut the third term down a little bit. And at 3 terms at the time, I would have termed out anyway. I would have had to go away for a while and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my fondest memories are and some of the things that we did, and some of the travel that we did, and I mean, I was in Beijing. Now, this is before things got kind of dicey here. I was in Beijing with a group of people from SEMA, and we met with Department of, I can't remember which department it was, but we met with them. You couldn't change the color of your car without a written review. Your registration had a picture, and if the car was white, it better be white on the. That's how stringent they were. So we went over there and we put together this consortium, and when we left, we had approval for 600 and some odd different parts that they were going to allow into the country. I've lost track of what's happened there, but I know I was very proud of being able to get that done. And then the other highlight of that trip was I don't think there's been very many round eyes that have spoken at. Am I allowed to say that? I probably should have said that.
You say, yeah, whatever.
Take that out. There hasn't been too many Americans that have spoken on Tiananmen Square, and I did while I was chairman. We had 400 journalists from around the world, and so it looked like the UN, right? Everybody had their little headset on. I'm speaking English, and it's going out. And if I told you that wasn't stressful, I'd be lying. But I enjoyed the hell out of it. So
contrary to people listen to this, what SEMA is not a car show. It's a trade show. It's an organization that, they raise money, but they also fight the laws to keep what we want to do for a living legal. And a lot of people just think, they see the Battle of the Builders on TV and they just think it's a car show. I want to take my car to the SEMA car show. And that's what some of that I'm not too supportive or positive on, of the public light that sometimes people know about SEMA and what the SEMA actually does, but they're still helping us. So I'm not a big fan of all the Battle of the Builders and we're going to do SEMA Fest and stuff, but all that helps raise more money for them that they need to fight this.
But I think you look at it and you ask yourself, if you go back even 10 or 15 years and what the show has grown into. Now, I don't have any problem with more people coming in and all the things that go on, but think about this. You can be a civilian and go to the SEMA show and never walk in the building with all the stuff that goes on outside.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, and when I still talk with my SEMA friends, sometimes I have opinions that maybe don't really fit in with today. I'm kind of like you. I think the fact that it's become such a spectacle, and the fact that it revolves around, if I hear the word SEMA build one more time, I'm going to throw up.
Amen.
Right? It's just like it's some rite of passage that we're going to build this car. One of my guys took his car out last year. He's got a really nice Fox body with a 700 horse 5.0 in it, and I mean it is gorgeous. And he decides he's going.
What's his name? It works at Ride Tech.
Yeah, Andrew Shank. You remember Andrew?
Yeah.
So I'm talking to him. I'm going, sure you want to do this? You're working during the week, right? So you're hanging out with your cars between 6 in the morning and 9, and then whatever you do at night, I don't care. So he loads this thing in a trailer. He drives it out there. He lives in Murfreesboro, it's a neighbor of yours. I don't know what it takes him, 2-3 days. He's got a high mileage Tahoe, and he's dragging this trailer with this car across. And he gets there, and the first thing that happens is it was supposed to be a feature vehicle. Well, it wound up over at West Hall on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I told him, I said, ain't no helping you in this one, buddy. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a time when I had some sway, not today. So then the show's over, and he loads her up, and he drives her home. And so he gets back Monday or something. So we're talking that week, and I said, so he goes, don't say it. Just don't say it. And I said, it's just, everybody thinks it's easy. It's not easy.
It's hard. Yeah. Move in and all that. It's a hassle, but I mean, all the cars, I mean, I think this is our maybe 26th, 27th year going this year. And again, it opened a lot of doors. That's where I met Kevin Tates, that turned into me moving to Tennessee and having my TV show back when all the OEMs were there. We had a dozen new vehicles gave to us. We had an 8-year run with General Motors. So she had a new vehicle every year to drive that we had to build, you know, month or two. That was not easy, but in the long run, I kind of missed that, the programs with the OEMs, because all of our vehicles have a lot of miles on them now. We could use another Duramax or something like that. So
yeah, but it has become a spectacle. It's really hard to do business at SEMA anymore.
That's where I was headed, right? Because it's a spectacle, it pulls attention away from what you're doing, and I mean, for what you're trying to do. And I mean, we look at the show differently today. You know, one day everybody went. You just, you know, emptied the building out. You stay and answer the phone. Everybody that's going to SEMA show. Not so much today. You know, the expense has gone up, obviously. Everybody just doesn't need to be there. So we'll go with maybe 6 this year.
I think SEMA's great for especially the new people. Like, we met a lot of people, started a lot of dealer programs for the shop, a lot of, you know, support and networking and stuff. I've mentioned, like, you know, doing the TV and stuff from that. But as you get to like us, we've been running our shop for 30 years now. You're not really going to get a new dealer or meet somebody, but it's good to see your people that you talk to on the phone face to face. I still like that. I'm still old. Carrie likes PRI better because it's a little bit different, a little bit less of a spectacle. It's not everybody does the same. You get to see some different hot rods or race car stuff that maybe isn't at SEMA. And so it's still good for the networking and getting to know people. But when you're in the business as long as we have, it's not totally, you're not getting new stuff all the time.
I would tell you this, that every year we come back from the SEMA show, and I do a complete analysis on ROI. Right now, it's difficult to look at it and say the ROI was this. I look at things.
Again, some new people, Carrie deals with this with some of the marketing she does with the companies. For all you young people, that means return on investment. None of this stuff is free. You get product. They want something out of it, either marketing, exposure, social media post, hashtag. It's return on investment. Right. Some people don't know what that means. So, go ahead.
So we look at this, and so usually there's you know, under regular business, we get to see people we do business with on a dealer level that we don't get to see during the course of the year. That's a good thing. But there's usually one nugget that comes out of that, whether it's some sort of an OE contract or something that probably wouldn't have happened if we weren't there.
Yeah.
So to sit here and go, I mean, you hear a lot of people going, oh, screw it, I'm not spending that much money to go anymore. That's not my point. I think you got to throttle it in how you go. You don't need the biggest booth. You don't need the most people, but you need there to do your brand and your product correctly. And I think that in talking about PRI, that has obviously grown as well. But I look forward to that. I mean, I really look forward to going to that. And I mean, I know last year. I brought Logan with me, and he was walking around trying to gain some new partners. And I said, here's what we'll do. I'll go with you on the first one. Your pitch. I'm going to stand there. I'm going to critique you. And let's see how this goes. And so he gets it all finished on the first one. And I looked at my watch and I said, well, got to go, buddy. Got to go work. You're on your own. Here's your list. Knock yourself out. He came out of there with 6 deals. And
Wow.
I give him a lot of credit, even though they weren't huge deals, but they were deals nonetheless.
Mhm.
And the thing about doing business like that, once you figure out what the deal is, you just keep making the zeros go up, right? You just keep making the numbers go up. So
did you get anybody that, like, he went to a company that you knew, and then you might have got a call from a company and it's like, hey, do you know this kid's walking around using your last name?
No, I never got any of that. He carries himself well, but it's just because he was talking about going to SEMA. I said, well, where you want to go? You want to go to SEMA? You want to go? I don't care where you go, but you're out of school now, buddy. That's your ticket. That's done.
Tell him to stick with PRI.
He's going to PRI, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, for what he does, that's more. Yeah. I'd say that's more his market.
It is.
Being a young kid as young he is, I worry about his safety being in Vegas.
Well, I don't know if it's safety that I'm worried about, but there's other things that could encroach.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, knowing all the choir boys we hang around with, probably not a good deal.
Yeah, watching Andy grow up around all of us. I mean, I held Andy when he was a baby, and everybody has definitely contributed to his warped sense of humor. And sometimes it brings a tear to my eye. It makes me so proud. Yeah.
I was at Street Rod Nationals one year, and I had Travis with me, my older son, and he's probably 12, maybe 13, and so big travel dilemma. I had to spend the night in Pittsburgh. You know the drill. So we get there late the next morning, and first guy we walk into is Menzler.
Yeah.
God bless him. So we're walking up to Menzler, and Menzler never even makes eye contact with me. He goes right for the kid, and he sticks out his hand. He said, "How you doing? I'm your Uncle John." He said, "What are you doing? We're gonna go get a tattoo. We're gonna go get a tattoo right now. Let's go." And he, these eyes wide up, and I looked at him. I go, "Yeah, don't worry about it. You're fine." But yeah, like I said, the hoodlums we hang around with, and I mean that in the kindest way. They've shaped a lot of children over the years, a lot of young people over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at some of the things that Chad Reynolds' son is doing, and I'd never picked it. I mean, he's always good with a camera, and he's this and that, and then all of a sudden he's building this engineering monstrosity that's just cooler than hell because nobody else has ever done it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay, anything else you want to add here at the end? When we started this, before we went to record it, he goes, what are we going to do, like 20, 25 minutes? And here we are, a little over 2 hours now.
I just looked down and I went to myself, well, so much for a half hour.
Yeah.
Which is fine. No, I really enjoyed the hell out of it. It was fun. I love doing these things. I sometimes I know when we hang up here, I go, shit, should have said that.
We can always do a part 2 later. We did that.
I got a great one. I missed that. That's such a great story. And listen, you'd be remiss I'd be remiss if I told you that I could tell you all the stories. I can't tell you all of them, but I can tell you.
Right. Yeah. Like we did Tom Taylor, the designer, and he did the same thing. Didn't want to do it. And we talked for an hour and a half, and then we have a part 2 scheduled for him about stuff that we totally missed about like sport trucks and stuff. That's the cool thing, that we can get on this and do this again. And we keep talking about, if somebody calls, they forgot this little story, we record a 10-minute little thing and then put that all into a show. So yeah, we're having a lot of fun with this, and we can't thank you enough for taking the time to do it.
And anytime, man. I felt I needed some redemption after getting uninvited to the other one. So I mean, I honestly, I told my wife, I said, this ain't going to happen. I already know, right?
Yeah.
That Kevin Bird called me and he said, hey, would you think about doing that? I said, yeah, we can do that. It's not a bitch session about anything. It's just about what you've done in your life and your career.
Right.
And powers to be just couldn't see that one. So
they keep theirs very short. I think it was like
Yeah.
45 minutes or something like that, because they do like little commercial breaks and all that stuff. And yeah, so we got way more information than Kevin was going to get out of you.
Yeah. And we don't edit it. So I'm
Hmm?
not changing the things that you're saying. You know,
Yeah,
so
we
it's
just keep it all
clear.
natural and
Yeah.
low key and just people talking.
We'll wait and see how much of this shows up out on the old interweb where it shouldn't, and then I'll let you know how your distribution's working.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, guys.
Well,
Awesome.
again,
Thank you so much.
We want to thank
you.
Jim
Where
Cozzie.
do we see you next? SEMA show, I guess.
SEMA.
Yeah, I'll be at Street Rod Nationals this weekend.
I won't be. The guys will be there. Stop
Me
by and
neither.
say hey. And
Not my favorite.
Yeah, I love it. She only likes to go for the go-karts. She's staying home with. We have a cat that has to have meds, so she's staying home with the cat right now.
We still talk about the go-kart track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he went and like him and Andy were just pounding each other in these go-karts.
Yeah.
See, last year we went and they closed at 8:00 instead of 10 till 10. And of course we usually go during the BMX racing. You think car people are bad? Take a bunch of BMX kids to the go-kart. It is really bad. Like one kid got his picture taken and banned for life. So
it's like taking kids that race go-karts to that track.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And the bet is how long before at least 3 get thrown out.
Yeah.
This is usually the troublemaker when we go. We used to take like 30 people out there, and they said, okay, we're closing at 8 tonight. Then he goes, from here on out next year, they're supposedly close at 7 because the boss says nothing good happens after 7:00. Even though we bring all these people, and like Dan Baker would just buy $100 tickets at a time, but we never really broke anything really. But yeah, they just
those rental carts are pretty robust. They have to be.
They are.
You couldn't pull that stuff away with the carts we raced. They just bend them. But I don't know how many years ago this was, but we went that night with you guys and everybody that was there. We had a ball. That was a hoot.
Yeah. Oh, it's a blast.
Yeah.
It's a blast. That's the only reason I go to that event.
Yeah. Okay. We want to thank again. We're going to sign off here. Jim Cozzie, currently at RideTech Fox, and industry legend, industry badass. We want to thank you for taking the time, and we'll see you at the SEMA show.
Thanks for having us. Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
The Strange Motion Way podcast, brought to you by Royal Purple Synthetic Oils.
Royal Purple premium synthetic motor oils and high-performance chemicals have been designed to improve performance in all conditions and provide cleaner operation, better mileage, and decreased oil change frequency. That means less oil changes. With products available for your gasoline and diesel engines, Royal Purple is the obvious choice for your performance needs. Drive with Royal Purple, the synthetic expert.